myself a lot. Like I made sure I was associated with people that was getting money, or was able to get the CO to bring something in. That's what the first part of my bid was about. How much I could acquire, um, what moves I could make, what I could accomplish in the negative side.
Man, so when you say survive, I would say that there were certain chances and choices that you had to make. What was the basis of these decisions? Were you gonna adopt what other people do? Were you gonna adapt to certain things? Were you just gonna be who you were? What was most important to you in terms of making decisions? Because I think some people, when they hear survive, it's kind of cutthroat. But then at the same time, from what I'm hearing from you, is that you chose a different type of cutthroat, or you chose to operate in a different type of manner based on the 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 history that you have with your parents and the stuff that you're not a bad kid, you're not a bad person, you're
Right.
just in a bad situation. So what what helped you kind of make the decisions between, say, going towards self-destruction path of survival versus another path of helping people and doing the things that, of course, you're going to have to adapt and you're going to have to adopt certain things, but what got you from being cutthroat to, say, helping and doing the things that are necessary for other people?
Yeah. So the cutthroat aspect of me was there because initially I fed into the violence. I focused on getting a reputation. After I figured out violence led to reputation, um, I postured myself a lot. Like I made sure I was associated with people that was getting money, or was able to get the CO to bring something in. That's what the first part of my bid was about. How much I could acquire, um, what moves I could make, what I could accomplish in the negative side. I had a conversation one day with a guy that's now my brother. His name's Jefferson Elliott, but Poetic Life of Law. And I remember I was walking through the pod. I was angry. I probably had just got in a fight or something that day. And he said, "Man," he said, "Bro," he said, "you don't even know who you are." He didn't say it in a disrespectful way. He said it like, "Man, you don't even like. Come on, man." And he was like, "Man, these guys, they move this way. If you say let's move this way," he said, "but you're leading them to the wrong. You lead them to their demise." And this is a guy that had 50 years. Um, and when he asked me that question at first, I was like, "Oh, but for whatever reason, I ended up having another conversation with him. And then just like the old school prison movies, next thing I'm in the cell with him, and we're playing chess, and we're reading books, and I get knowledge of self, and I start understanding, our history didn't start at slavery, and I start to understand my value. And then I started understanding leadership because he taught me leadership is about serving the people around you. And now I was able, at the time, before I left, I was a gang member that was, leading dudes this way. And now I was somebody who, staff in the institution, they say, yo, this guy's starting to move positive. Let's give him a classroom because he can get the guys together and they could talk about stuff and be productive. Oh, let's holler at him because something's going to happen on the yard and he might be able to diffuse it, So I started to let the staff use me. They gave me a what they called a senior elder position or mentor position at the prison, the reentry program. But I let them use me so I could make sure the brothers. I made sure they had jobs. I made sure they were able to go to school. I made sure, if a guy, instead of sending him to a level 5 because he got in trouble, hey, let's see if he can stay out of trouble for 30 days. And I'm grateful. I was able to, to do that even as a prisoner. You know, I don't know.
So that become, and it's interesting that you say that because, like I said before, it seems like you started having a high regard and respect for yourself. Once you started to have a high regard and respect for yourself, you started becoming more authentic in terms of how you moved. Your behavior started to change towards the collective group.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah,
So, and that's very interesting. So while you're in there, I hear that you know you're also teaching lectures.
yeah. So me and a buddy of mine, Freddie Williams, I call him the pastor. He swear he's not a pastor. This man a pastor. Um, and he's older guy from the Bronx. I'm a younger guy. I got influence, but he knows how that man got a message. I always tell him, I say, some people got a voice, some people got a message. You got both, bro. And he's somebody I would listen to. And eventually we ended up being able to collab. And the people, certain people on the institution, including the warden, they said, hey, these are guys that we can utilize in a positive way. And when they gave us the opportunity to start facilitating groups with the guys that we were locked up with and talk about real issues, and they were able to listen so they could be more impactful, more doors started opening. So now other prison staff, they wanted to come and see what was going on. And then we were able to bring in nonprofits, and then the colleges came, like ECPI and Marion William and different colleges. So yeah,
Okay, so other than that, which is very impressive, by the way.
thank you.
Other than that, I hear you found love in prison.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I don't mean like that, but I hear that you met a woman in prison or while
Yeah,
you were in prison. So
yeah. I met my wife from the lectures actually. Um,
okay,
I was facilitating or helping facilitate a couple seminar at one of the prisons I was at, a relationship seminar, and uh, my wife's right hand was in attendance. She was there with her husband. Her husband was incarcerated, and it was a program where the loved ones could come in, the spouses, and sit, and they would go through different, group sessions and activities. And anyways, her friend had heard me speak, and she also knew I had a nonprofit at the time with my buddy Freddie Williams that I mentioned. And she was like, "Hey, you got to connect with my friend on the bit, at least on the business side, because she's smart, and you need somebody on the outside that's genuine." And ended up getting on a phone call with her, with my now wife. And I always tell her, I said, in the first 20 minutes, I knew she was going to be my wife, because before the end of the phone call, she had asked if she could pray for me, and I hadn't had that, and it just hit me in a way. And when you see something different, you know, I don't know. I made up my mind right then.
was it? I'm guessing was it? And I'm sure it's not easy, but did you
No.
guys get married in prison, or what was the situation in regards to how you guys went from, I guess, business partners to now you're in a relationship?
Yeah, yeah, it was extremely hard. I always tell people don't try this at home, but then again, you can't, because one of you is probably locked up. But man, the majority of relationships like ours don't last. It is what it is. It's not a secret. But it's not because one of you guys are bad people. It's just that it's very hard. When we come home from prison, we got trauma. We don't know who we are, and we've never lived. So there's a whole bunch of things you got to face. But as far as our relationship, while I was incarcerated, it it was phone calls that progressed from business and the personal conversations to dreams and possibilities, and just realizing that I found a friend. And one thing we're always proud of, though, again, I don't know how it would have been if I was out here. Um, we could only deal with each other mentally and emotionally. We had to learn who each other were before the physical got involved. Um, we've gone on record as saying, although we got married while I was in prison, we probably would never have done that. It was just the circumstance at the time. My wife was already in Georgia. I was in Virginia, and we didn't think it was a good idea for me to stay in Virginia. It was just, if we're going to do this, we're going to take a leap of faith. And my wife, her being a soldier that she is, I still feel bad about it to this day. But it makes me realize how much she loves me, because she walked in that prison, in that visitation room, and she married me. And it was just me and her and the officiants and God. And I don't know, we're still here to this day.
And how long was that before you actually was released?
So we got married about 7 months prior to me coming home.
Okay.
Because after when you get to the 12-month mark, that's when they want to know your reentry plan, where you're headed, what are you gonna do when you go home.